You're listening to Accio Politics, a MuggleNet podcast about politics in the wizarding world of Harry Potter. I'm Adri, one of your hosts and a forever recovering English major, wistfully remembering when the height of stress was having a paper due the next day. Oh, and fondly looking back on times where we did not inhabit a fascistic hellscape. So go out and vote this orange buffoon out, I implore you.
I'm Helene, your host, producer, and please go out and vote.
Hey y'all, it's me, Kay Alex, trivia guru, former boarding school brat, and as of yesterday, newest member of the 30 and Up Club. I'm not going to remind you to vote because you've been told several times already, including twice in this episode. Instead, I'm going to remind you to get your flu shot.
Today, we will be delving into Chapter 11 of Order of the Phoenix, the Sorting Hat's new song.
This is the one where, after arriving at Hogwarts, the Sorting Hat sings a warning song about unity, and Umbridge makes a boring yet very concerning, to Hermione specifically, speech.
But before we get to the chapter, it's time for our Potterwise segment, where we discuss some of the latest news in the United States.
All right, guys, what are we talking about today?
Well, the news that jumped out at me this week was
quite literally,
was actually Jeffrey Toobin. Jeffrey Toobin, I think is how you say it. Yeah. So he's CNN's chief legal analyst and a renowned reporter for the New Yorker. And he unfortunately was suspended and from CNN, and then I think on leave from the New Yorker, or that could be mixed up. He could be on leave from CNN and suspended from the New Yorker for.
You have that correct the second time.
Okay, there we go. He was suspended / on leave for masturbating during a Zoom call with his colleagues. He claims that he didn't know he was on camera. He thought he was on mute and that his camera was off. And yet he's still on a work call, jerked off in front of everybody in his company. And I just cannot imagine what was going through his head.
As someone who is on Zoom quite often for their career, it kind of like begs the question, like, what do people think they should be doing when their camera and their mic is off? Obviously, masturbating should be very, very low on the list. It kind of like leads into like, people saying like, as a teacher, oh, you shouldn't make the kids want to like put their cameras on, or you respect people's privacy and we shouldn't ask them to like keep their mic on, or, all those things are not signs of participation. And it's like, but then CNN's top dog gets to masturbate.
Yeah, I honestly I'm a little concerned because I honestly think it shows maybe some sort of maybe sexual addiction, because I don't know whose first impulse it is to masturbate during the workday when you're supposed to be on a Zoom call, even if your camera and mic is off. Like that can wait until after work is over.
Yeah.
It's like, what about work makes you so horny, my man? Like, nothing kills my mood like work. TBH.
Yeah. Like, I'm self-conscious about people hearing me eating or watching me like change shirts, or, if I accidentally close my eyes when the 1 hour meeting turns into 2, like.
Yeah.
I think an acceptable list of things you can do while you're like on mute and off camera during a meeting are like rolling your eyes, flipping people off when they say annoying things, like just
playing
normal things.
playing a game on your phone or
using
reading
your Nintendo Switch Lite to play Animal Crossing. Definitely not something I have done. I have done none of these things while on mute and my camera's off.
That doesn't sound extremely specific at all.
No, not at all. What do you mean I can't watch Netflix?
Yeah, texting other people who are also on the same goddamn call.
I've done that before.
And being like, what the fuck? He won't shut up? Like, why?
Right.
I've 100% done that before.
Or telling those very same people, yo, this could have been an email.
Yeah, same. Yeah, like that is the forever mood of like, it still could have been an email. What are we doing? It is the year of our Lord 2020. How can we not figure this out?
Yeah.
I think the one thing though that like, and maybe because I haven't been doing a bunch of research into it, so I won't hold my breath, but like, I'm very surprised that like sexual assault allegations haven't come across with this man yet.
So yes, sexual harassment allegations have come across him.
Oh, no.
I was actually thinking about this, in preparation for this episode, because these events are not isolated, obviously. And if he is as bold enough to be like, I'm just gonna like whip it out like in the middle of the workday. Yeah. And I don't even know if like he just didn't know like his camera was on or not. Don't care. Still not appropriate to do,
Yeah.
Anyway, in the middle of a workday and also in the range of a camera. It's a pattern of behavior, and it wouldn't surprise me. I knew about the sexual harassment allegations, but it wouldn't surprise me if this is just the tip of the iceberg, if you will. No pun intended with the genitalia situation. I'm cringing right now.
So, moral of the story: don't masturbate, even if you don't think you're visible on your Zoom call. Just don't do it. If you want to keep your job and your reputation, just wait,
I mean, don't do it in the middle of a workday with your work laptop open.
Just wait.
It's not, just
it can wait.
True love waits.
Yeah. Speaking of people doing things that they're not supposed to be doing while they're doing something else. I was scrolling social media right now. Apparently, the hashtag #MeToobin has been going around.
What?
Yeah, and it's pretty much a debate about whether or not like this counts as sexual assault or harassment, or it's a pretty indecent hijacking of the Me Too movement, which is a take as well. Like it is. I mean, at the first basis, it's like keep it in your pants, man. But second, it's like really like.
It wasn't directed at one specific person. According to him, we don't have any hard evidence, but according to Jeffrey Toobin, hard evidence. We don't like he didn't think anyone could see him. So like, I mean, if that's a lie and he knew that he was exposing himself to his entire workplace, that could be considered sexual harassment. Mm-hmm. But if it was a real mistake where he, made a dumb decision to do this in the middle of the workday and he just forgot to turn his camera and his mic off, then that's not a targeted attack against anyone.
There's also, I think part of that, that hashtag Me Too with this asshole's whatever name on it has to do with, men basically exposing themselves pun intended, to the world as creepers. You know, like who amongst us has not jerked off in the middle of the workday type thing?
Yeah.
So it's like, well, maybe, just maybe, you need to look at your actions and reflect on your problematic and predatory behavior, you guys.
Yeah, like this really clear tweet from Adrian Lawrence says, masturbating at work is neither normal or acceptable. It's sexual harassment. Individuals who engage in sexual harassment should suffer professional consequences. And of course, the men are telling on themselves. It's like, you can't defend this, y'all. You can't whip out your dick at work, even if that work is online. Can't do it.
Shouldn't. Yeah. Like I think that's like a really big issue with the fact that all these lines are blurred since COVID with like working from home. Because technically this guy is in his own home, but he's also at work. And I feel like people have always had the issue with making those lines really clear of when I'm working from home, my home is work. And when I am not working, my home is my home.
Yeah.
But people kind of since we've been doing this for so long, and some people have been working from home for 8 months now, like it's all just blurring together. You know, like what I do in my home is now what I'm doing at my office, and what I'm doing in my office is now what I'm doing in my home. So like, it's just those distinctions don't exist anymore for some people, I think.
It could be argued that it never existed for him. Like moving it into his domestic space, with what we know about, you know, his past sexual harassment accusations against him, it could mean that like he felt like even more emboldened to do something like that. Speaking of cameras that are on or shouldn't be on, and mutes that should be on and not on. Tonight, as time of the recording, Thursday, the 22nd of October, is the third and last presidential debate, because we skipped the second one.
For town halls, separate town halls.
Yes. Yeah. But, you know, the second and last / third, I guess.
Well, since we're not watching, I have no way to confirm this, but apparently they're going to mute them for 2 minutes during their opponent's first initial responses to the questions. So,
what? I wish I had the power to mute Trump
all the time. Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah, after November 3rd. So,
we do have the power. You're right. We have the power to mute Trump by voting him out. Let's do it. Woo!
Period.
We can, you know, we just like vote him out and then like block him on Twitter like a normal fucking person does. I mean, he'll go to Russia anyway. Like, it doesn't matter. He said he wasn't going to stay in the United States if he lost. Oh. So don't threaten me with a good time, Trump. Like,
yeah,
God, if I hadn't already voted, I would vote again.
Putin will be happy to have you. He probably has the that suite in Russia all made up for you, the one where the strippers peed on you. Do you guys remember that? Remember when we used to talk?
Tape.
Yeah, the pee tape, the golden showers. You know, remember when that was a thing? That happened in Russia.
Do you think that's why where he gets like the inspiration for his shade of toupee?
I will never know.
That's a particular shade of pee. Anyhow, speaking of Trump and people who would most likely want to mute him and block him and, you know, forget he exists, Fauci, I think might be in that circle of people right now.
Yeah, you can tell he's starting to get super fed up. He's like, I'm so done with this shit.
I've never really rooted for a white man the way that I've rooted for Dr. Fauci. And, like, but it really pissed me off that, like, imagine somebody has been doing their job for several decades at this point. You know, he's got to walk around with a bulletproof vest on and a couple of bodyguards now because your boss basically is telling people to come and take you out. A train of communication to talk about Trump's audacity. Like,
it's crazy.
I am at a complete loss at how literally threatens people's lives, and there are idiots out here who actually take that seriously.
I mean, talk about unprecedented times. Like, no one ever thought that we would be living in a world where the president just so casually threatens people's lives and gets away with it with no consequences whatsoever.
And considering the fact that we have actually had an actual mob boss as the president, that's saying something.
Right.
But let somebody come out here saying make assassinations great again. Just go out here and do your jobs, folks, on November 3rd.
Right.
And be in the 53 and 62%. I'll never forget those numbers. 53%.
Will you explain them again for our listeners?
That was the number of white women, I believe, who voted for Trump in the last.
You are correct. You are correct.
And what was the other one?
62% of white men.
Oh my God. Yep. Okay. I'm depressed. Let's talk about Harry Potter because I'm depressed.
But I wanted to say something real quick.
Oh, go ahead. Yes. I mean, I don't want to silence you, so definitely say what you want to say.
As one of the women of color in this podcast, I feel silenced by Helene.
Excuse me. Woman. Do not make me feel like a white supremacist. I'm not. I promise.
All right, so them victim tears.
So, I learned my victimhood from old white women. Anyway, Trump said, and I quote, Biden would listen to scientists.
I remember that
as an own. And I was like, yes, as he should. Tell me what is wrong with this picture.
Yeah, I posted a meme to our Instagram story about that, and it's so very, very true. Let me see if I can. Oh no, it went away. Let me see if I can find it. I have it saved, but it's basically, it says, Trump, if Sleepy Joe is elected, he'll listen to scientists. Me, joke's on you. I'm into that shit.
I am very into political leaders who listen to people who know what the shit they're talking about.
Exactly.
Yes.
Oh, speaking of people that know what they're talking about, the latest fact check, Joe said that the expectations is that we'll have another 200,000 Americans dead between now and the end of the year.
Oh my God.
Actually not correct. But recent metrics released by the Institution for Health Metrics and Evaluation just suggest that there could be a total of 312,000 deaths or an additional 88,000 by the end of the year.
Oh my God.
So.
And I mean, I think that also, that's kind of like with the current tracking. I think there are a lot of deaths that have occurred even, as this started to become known that have not been tracked in conjunction with the virus.
Oh yeah, I'm sure people. There has to be ways that tons of states and people are underreporting for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. But no matter what you believe you should be doing in the ballot box or at the ballot box, wear a mask.
Please. Honestly, I'm gonna say, especially as it's been getting colder. I mean, I'm in Minneapolis, so we had our first snowstorm a couple of days ago, like 7 inches of snow. It's been like 30 degrees every day for like the last week, and I gotta say, it's actually really nice wearing a mask now because it keeps my face warm. So there's your incentive to wear your mask a little bit more often here in the winter months. It's actually very comfortable.
A mask, it's like a scarf for your face.
Exactly.
All right, I think we can talk Harry Potter now, I guess.
If we have to.
If we have to.
See,
All right. Is it my turn? Is it me? Am I?
Yes, you are first up for our Hogwarts debate club, where we give our takes on what the politic is in this chapter for 30 seconds. And I will send out a poll at the end of every episode to have you guys vote to see who won. Let's see if let's take a look at this week's poll results. I think last I checked, Adri and I were in a dead heat.
Oh.
Yeah. Yep. It ended and it was tied between me and Adri.
These folks don't vote for me because I'm light skinned.
You were voted for last week.
I take it all back, viewers. I love you.
Okay, bring it, Adri.
I think I'll redeem myself this chapter.
I'm excited.
Okay. I mean, I'm not redeeming myself. It's going to be terrible. But here we go. All right. My politic this week is the politics of legacy and history. We see it through the Sorting Hat's new song, which kind of goes a little bit more in the background of Hogwarts, and also with Umbridge, who has a very different and colonialist mentality about history, and also kind of Confederate flaggy type situation. So history and legacy is at play here in this chapter.
Will you shut up, man?
Okay, I am ready.
All right, and 3, 2, 1, go.
Minus the politics of judgment. Luna judging Hagrid based solely on his teaching, while the rest of them are judging him based on their personal relationships with him. The Sorting Hat judging what house the first years belong in based on the people they are right now at age 11. Do we sort too soon? ? Let's think about that. Umbridge judging the entirety of Hogwarts and how it is run by deciding things need to change to her liking. And Seamus and his mother judging Harry and Dumbledore based on what they read in the Daily Prophet.
Will you shut up, man?
Yes.
I'm sorry. I need to do this.
I'm glad I didn't use. Last week I was gonna do snap judgments, and I'm glad I didn't, because this just basic judgment worked a lot better for this chapter. So I'm happy I saved it.
It did really well. Good job.
Thank you.
All right, okay, Alex, are you ready?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, 3, 2, 1, go.
The politics of foresight and radical change. Fully embracing his role as a historical record, the Sorting Hat makes a pretty obvious attempt at warning the Hogwarts community of the dangers that are coming their way and how they have to put aside their petty rivalries and personal differences to overcome it. Still, even with the brains such as Hermione and Nearly Headless Snake dissecting the message correctly, it still seems that history is doomed to repeat itself as students refuse to break old habits and use critical thinking in the face of imminent interference from the Ministry of Magic.
You just like powered on through. You're like, I'm finishing this.
I mean, if Trump can ignore his moderator, I can do this.
That's true.
You know what? I'm just gonna keep doing the air horn sound if y'all keep ignoring me.
Oh, I love the air horn sound. I was like, I can't think of what it's called. No, it's great.
Step in every job with the confidence of a mediocre white man, okay?
Yeah, like I'll be stepping in here like, there you go. You're welcome.
You finally got that sound effect, and now you're gonna use the crap out of it. I love it.
I'm just gonna abuse it, you know?
I was gonna say abuse.
I was gonna say I'm actually kind of sad because this means we won't get your version of the air horn in your own voice. Because I liked that a lot.
Oh, I'm sorry. You mean the...
Yeah, you do such a good job when you do it.
I know you're lying, but I'm just going to keep on doing it.
Oh, I love it. I do. I love it.
Radical changes coming to Accio-politics, y'all. Look at that.
I think Kay Alex is trying to tell us she does not, in fact, love it.
I do.
Mm-hmm. She's trying to be polite because she's sleeping in my guest bedroom.
Oh, you wound me.
Oh, goodness.
All right.
So
thank you, ladies, for your politics. They were wonderful.
Yeah, I definitely really like basic judgment. Because it's everybody seems to be pretty judgmental from the past 2 chapters.
Poor fucking Harry. Like, he can't catch a break. He tries to smile at one of the first years, and they're like, "Oh shit, it's the lunatic."
Yeah, and also like we talked about this the last time, but like even nobody really likes being gossiped about, and like seeing that is the consistent thing here where like nobody, like all these people who would usually be able to actually talk to Harry, like we don't really have, like there hasn't really been a point in the book where it's just like Harry Potter is just completely unapproachable. Like I can't talk to him about anything. And now he's the subject of every rumor, every piece of hot gossip, every snap judgment.
I think that people might be scared of him, honestly.
No, for sure. Definitely. And there have been several times throughout the books where Harry has been involved in some situations that like would be absolutely terrifying to somebody who like probably wasn't being chased down by a fascist wizard.
Yeah.
But, like, for a 15-year-old, it has to be pretty frustrating to be like, you know, I live with you, I eat with you, I take classes with you.
Yeah, I'm just trying to live my life, you know? Like, I just want to be a normal kid, and y'all are just making it so hard for me. I feel so bad for the guy. And like this whole Seamus thing, I know it's kind of jumping to the end of the chapter, but like, he must feel so betrayed to have someone who he thought knew him that like so intimately, like they've shared a room for 5 years.
Yeah.
And I think he probably considers him one of his closer friends. Yeah, I mean, not his best friend, but like if anything, he thinks Seamus knows him, and then to just turn around and find out that this person who he thought knew him believes the stuff that this has been written about him in the papers, and doesn't actually believe that he's a good person, has got to just hurt so badly.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that kind of goes into like the critical thinking piece too, because people aren't really slowing down to think about like, how has Harry handled these situations before? Yeah. Like with the Sorcerer's Stone, the Chamber of Secrets. I know people wouldn't know about like the whole Time Turner and Sirius Black thing, because that might be one of Hogwarts' few secrets. Yeah. Holy shit. But also like the Triwizard Tournament was a year before. Like it honestly wasn't even a year. It was like a couple months ago. Like it's they're not really giving Harry any grace or credit.
No, they're not.
And they're not doing any thinking about like, okay, what is the Daily Prophet's main job? It's to give the news unbiasedly. And I think and because we see, especially in the films, like we see that the wizarding community almost depends too much on the Daily Prophet for news.
Well, it's a monopoly. Like that's the problem. Yeah. They don't have a Washington Post and a New York Times and all these different, they don't have a Fox News. They don't have all these different.
I mean, what they have is the Quibbler, right? Like they have.
It's literally those two that we know of. Yeah.
Yeah, we have. But I wanted to piggyback something real quick. Something Alex said when Alex was talking about Harry and what he was going through, and people weren't thinking about what he was going through. They were just kind of passing judgment on him, which goes back to your politic, Helene. Mm-hmm. It made me think about the bodies of celebrities and the way that we talk about celebrities. So the parallel of celebrity and notoriety is that you are no longer a person to anyone. So even in like Chamber of Secrets or Sorcerer's Stone or even Prisoner of Azkaban, like Harry is, and definitely Goblet of Fire, Harry is not a person to those who talk about him and who watch him. He is a something to be talked about, but never analyzed or thought of in a critical way, in a way of, oh, I wonder what that feels like. I wonder how he's coping, because his body is physically unbroken. Yeah. Therefore, nothing else matters. So it's Harry in that way is something to be consumed, not nourished.
Yeah, for sure. He's the boy who lived, the Triwizard Champion,
the chosen one,
the chosen one. He's got for better and for worse, he's got a bunch of celebrity, and notoriety that comes with judgment and even defamation of reputation. And as we talked about before, like the ministry can no longer use that celebrity or notoriety as an advantage piece. So they're basically doing away with him. And Harry makes this really intelligent connection between how Dumbledore has fallen out of favor as well. Being stripped of his titles and being removed from communities that also overly depended on his intellect and his strategy. Just out of the fact that he can no longer be used for political clout. Mm-hmm. So it also would be nice if Dumbledore would be an adequate mentor right now and talk to Harry, but we'll get to that later on in the book. But leaning forward into radical changes, it really bothers me that the Sorting Hat is pretty much telling the entire community that they faced this danger before, and these are the bad things that happened. And these things happened because the people inside of the community refused to change.
One before we get into it, I just have one other comment on, you mentioned Dumbledore and how he is how he's shutting Harry out. And I noted at the end of the chapter where you said that Dumbledore is losing all of the status, and Harry even asks himself at the end of this chapter, like, is the reason Dumbledore is not talking to me because he's mad at me because he believed me and stood up for me, and now he's wreaking now his life is being affected by it.
Yeah.
And it just feels, it's just so heartbreaking to have him have to wonder if the reason that Dumbledore is not talking to him is because he's mad at him.
Yeah, as somebody who often gets anxiety about people being mad at me, the opposite of that is being frustrated that people do not communicate their feelings and intentions.
Oh my God, same.
And it is not Harry has a lot of responsibility as the protagonist of this series, but trying to discern and figure out the motivations of a 150-year-old man is not one of them.
Yeah, and I always get so frustrated with Dumbledore in this book because I do think that he could have a simple conversation with Harry that explains why he has to do this, and then he can continue doing it so that Harry doesn't have to sit there and wonder the whole time.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of my biggest problems with Dumbledore, but we will get there.
Yeah.
Like a lot of brilliant people, Dumbledore is not great at the people skills part of it in terms of understanding that he should have that conversation with Harry, because he has already skipped from like, I defended him, I keep defending him and showing up for him, to like the next task in his like 3D chess match, where Harry is just a pawn. So why would you need to communicate with a pawn?
Yeah, I kind of, okay, I can lean into that, but
I'm not excusing it, right? I'm just saying, like, one of his character flaws is that he does not have that ability that someone like, say, Professor McGonagall would have.
I feel like he lacks a certain amount of empathy, I think.
Yeah, he does. In these last couple chapters, we see that Hogwarts as a community has a lot of flaws, and it hurts a bit, because, especially from Harry's point of view, because this is the one place that he considers home. And like, kind of leaning into the adage of home is where the heart is. And like, you know, home is supposed to bring about these feelings of comfort and joy and camaraderie and even peace, to be quite honest. That Harry is no longer feeling those things, not just because of outward forces, but because the people inside are creating dissension and chaos. And the Sorting Hat has given them the solutions. Like, the Sorting Hat is telling them, and this is like, critics and the fandom argues a lot about whether or not the Sorting Hat is a sentient being, like if it has thoughts of its own. And I believe that this poem shows that it does. Like, it has the intellect, and it has the wherewithal to warn its community that these radical changes are coming and that they're not good. And that if they don't start using their wits and they don't start actually coming together and putting aside their petty biases, then they're going to be in a lot of trouble. And
I definitely think the Sorting Hat is a sentient being with its own thoughts, for sure.
Yeah. And the fact that, you know, yes, that they're kids, but they're also shifting really fast into this world of adulthood or puberty or you know, like, because they're according to Wizarding World math, they're 2 years away from adulthood. So you kind of want you want to see those shifts a little bit from childhood ways and youthful longing, and just kind of little deviations from things that make us innocent or things that make us. You want to see a progression of maturity. And in this chapter, it seems like you almost have this regression of immaturity in most characters, and you're only seeing progression and the maturity of characters that you would have expected to mature, because people have been underestimating them from the beginning. While I can get that Seamus has a relationship with his mother, he lives with Harry. And I just think that this was a sign of his immaturity in that moment, to where he couldn't separate what his mother thought to what he possibly thought and what he knew of Harry, and make a critical decision.
It really reminds me of like people who get all of their political beliefs and all of their views on the world from their parents, which, I mean, it happens a lot. I know I got a lot of it happens all the time, every single day. Most people get their values from their families. And it just reminds me of, a lot of the younger Republicans I've met. They grew up in households where it was socially acceptable to be racist or to be prejudiced. And they were never taught by anyone to have different values or to value every human life the same or anything like that. And it just reminds me of, it just seems like Seamus, instead of thinking critically and making his own decision about how he thinks the world is working right now and whether or not he believes Harry, he just blindly listens to what his mother says, unfortunately.
Yeah. And the opposite of that is Neville, who, we typically assign these like just dorky and kind of like awkward, out of place characteristics to. And he steps up in a really big way by saying like, yeah, I have a relationship with my grandma, and my grandma is also like pure blood and can be very focused in her thinking, but she's also taught me to think for myself. And we know that the Daily Prophet is making shit up. Like, we know, like, we believe Harry and we believe Dumbledore.
It's interesting to me that it's Neville and his grandmother who have been personally and familiarly affected by Voldemort, other than like the Weasleys, who also believe Harry and are in the Order, who believe Harry and Dumbledore because they understand what they're facing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's really interesting that in their dorm room, the 5 boys, that they have all 3 casts represented. Ron and Neville is pure blood, Seamus and Harry is half blood, and Dean is the Muggle-born. And you see this caste split of how do we handle the changes being made to our environment? How do we handle the political landscape of our ways? Like, Seamus has the privilege of being able to talk to his mother and believe his mother and support the Ministry and the Daily Prophet in their defamation of Harry because it doesn't cost them. It doesn't cost them anything. Meanwhile, like you said, Neville and his family have already been affected by tyranny and fascism. And Ron's family as well. And Harry's family as well. And I'm going to talk about it again in Dementors and Chocolate, but Dean's family, and the decisions that he makes. And it's like to see that the changes that are being made and the foreshadowing that the Sorting Hat has already predicted has already begun. They're fighting inwardly, and they're all a part of the same house. Like, we haven't even gotten into disagreeing with Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw and, of course, Slytherin yet. The fighting has already begun inside their house and their dorm.
Yeah, they didn't even need Umbridge's help this time.
No. The villains haven't even touched. At least not physically. Like, even the possibility of there being a threat has already caused dissension.
Yeah. The Sorting Hat's warning, it actually it hit me a different way this time than it did the first, however many times I've read this book. I never really fully understood the impact of the Sorting Hat going out of its way to give this warning until I was reading it this time around, and I was like, whoa, this is a big deal.
Yeah, and to kind of give a very as a poet, it's just beautiful the way that the poetry both tells a story and gives us foreshadowing of plot.
Yeah.
Like the artistry of poetry here and the Sorting Hat is beautiful. It's one of my favorite takes of Harry Potter. But it also lends to the fact of Hogwarts was almost destroyed by the very thing that a lot of fans take the most pride in. The characteristics that make up your house.
Yeah.
And when you stop to think, you stop to think about like how hard it is for them to even reach outside of the scope of there are people in other houses that I could get along with, but I belong to this house and this house has these traits and these are the traits that are supposed to be the most important to me. It's like, okay, how do you bridge that gap and while also still taking pride in who you are? Like, for example, yes, I take pride in being a Ravenclaw, but not at the expense of thinking that everyone else is unintelligent.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, that kind of leads very well into one of the things I wanted to make sure we talked about in terms of the Sorting Hat and Umbridge, in terms of how this chapter positions legacy and history in ways that are very similar to the ways we talk about the Civil War here in the United States. The Sorting Hat's song and warning is given to us with a version of history that we ought to examine, question, and learn from so that we do not repeat the same mistakes through division and like the elitism of it. And as an aside, I find very heartening that even the Sorting Hat is like, it is my legacy and it is my duty to sort you children into different houses. But even I question the validity of doing this because I have seen what it has done in the past, and I have seen, and so because of what it has done in the past, I can see what it could do in the future. And so the Sorting Hat's new song is heartening in that way, that one, it knows that it has a job to do, even though it questions that job that it has been given by the wizards who created him, right? Or it. But at the same time, it says, like, don't buy into this bullshit. Like, yeah, I'm going to sort you, but make sure that you can come together so that we can avoid disaster. On the other hand, so that's kind of like using history and noting the deficiencies of people in history to make sure that we don't make the same mistakes again. Dolores Umbridge questions legacy in the way of if there's a person I don't like, I don't need to listen to them or what they have done, but I will enforce every rule. And I'm not going to do progress for progress's sake.
Well, yeah,
yes, so I'm all about like structure and legacy. And if like if we have been prejudiced against certain kinds of people, we're going to continue doing it, you know?
Well, I think that it's more like I think that she's kind of anti-legacy, especially in the terms of Hogwarts, because
like the way she's into legacy in the same way people who are defenders of the Confederacy are into legacy with statues.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with her, it's kind of like, it seems like she's saying, I don't care if this is how things have always been at Hogwarts. I'm going to change whatever is necessary to make it fit my narrative.
Exactly. What I was trying to get at with this is kind of like the way in the United States, certain people talk about the Confederacy, right? Like they cherry pick the facts that fit their own narrative and their sense of pride in their supposed legacy without looking at the full picture.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me actually of like people who are like that are very like true to the Bible in their religion. You know, like the Bible says that gay people shouldn't be able to get married. And the Bible says, you know, this or that. But at the same, like, but these people they're like all about legacy unless it makes their life inconvenient, because the Bible also says, you know, you can't get a tattoo or, you shouldn't gossip or even like the Old Testament even has the laws of kashrut, which nobody who like follows the Old Testament or the New Testament takes to heart at all. Like you're not supposed to mix milk and meat in the same meal, or I mean, like, and so it's just it reminds me of like, oh, I'm going to cherry pick exactly what part of the legacy works for me and enforce that on other people.
Oh yeah, for sure. And the media is doing the same thing, which is, it's just interesting to see like these blends of I would call as a teacher like the political trifecta. You have the government, the media, and you have education. Like, and I truly believe that the only reason why education is there is because the wizarding world doesn't have a religion, which, I mean, fair, because magic and God a lot. But seeing it's a slam dunk to see the government interfere in how children are being educated, and even bigger slam dunk to use the media to basically misinform and gaslight parents into making hasty decisions about their children's education.
Mm-hmm.
As we see with Seamus and his mother.
And something that you said, Adri, earlier about how, you know, the sorting hat is basically like, yeah, I have to sort you because that's what I'm here for. It reminded me of the question that I kind of semi-posed during my politic, during the Hogwarts Debate Club of like, do we sort too soon? That always makes me wonder, because they are dividing these kids up at a very young age and kind of teaching them this mentality of like, yeah, I guess it's good to instill a mentality of like pride, you know, house pride. You get a sense of community when you do that. You kind of feel like you found your people, but at the same time,
family in a way, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like a fraternity or sorority, in a way, where like you have these people that are kind of expected to, be there for you because you're in the same house. But it's always been a question for me of whether or not, like, these kids are 11 years old. Can this sorting hat see the future? Is that how it determines whether or not someone belongs in a certain house when they're 11? Because the values that I had as an 11-year-old have changed a lot as I've grown older and realized what is important to me. Like back in the day when I was 11, I might have thought that being like that wisdom and knowledge and the pursuit of education were the most important things to me in the world. And now I care more about friendship and loyalty and honesty and trust. Like my values have changed. So
I think that's more about the subtleties of kind of going back to our conversation about religion. The Bible, and specifically the Catholic faith, upholds the age of 12 as the age of enlightenment. And there are even shows in our modern culture that talk about how I think it's actually Criminal Minds that quoted that the age of 14 is where our tastes in music and reading have been absolutely solidified. And it's not saying that we don't make changes, but these are the years to where basically the foundation of our identities start to take shape. And I believe that makes sense because, yes, while we are adults, but like 11 through 14, 15, that's puberty. That's where we start to rebel against our parents. That's when we start to discover that we might like rock and roll more than we like classical or jazz. That's when we start watching the horror movies in the basement.
But I wonder if, like, by doing it that way, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So, like, if I had been sorted at 11, what if I was sorted into Ravenclaw and I never grew up to be the person that I am today because I was sorted into Ravenclaw and I took that on as my identity, and I decided to prioritize my values and how I live my life around that instead of allowing myself to evolve into the adult I am today, who is a very, very hard and fast Hufflepuff, Like, does getting sorted when you're at the peak of your puberty, when you haven't fully figured out the person you want to be yet, kind of shape how you are going to be in the future?
I think that Helene, that is a valid question, and I think that has some kind of almost like scientific backing or psychological backing in a way. One, I don't think we're ever fully done growing and evolving, right?
Mm-hmm.
I hope not. But it is true that whoever you spend time with or surround yourself with really does impact who you become or who you transform into. In fact, there's a pretty popular study that shows, I mean, this is on earnings, but it also has to do with like your diet, your lifestyle, and all of these things. So you can take your 5 closest friends and you can average their salaries, and they will be very close to your own. So part of that is, who you surround yourself with. One, starts cultivating the expectations you have of the world and how you look at yourself and the expectations you have of yourself.
Dang, I gotta get richer friends.
Well, so do I, but when you find them, throw some of those my way as well.
But I I think that was a very Ravenclaw response, though. Like with a tinge of Slytherin. But I think too, and I believe as someone who is now going to pull a Seamus and quote their parent. My dad used to tell me all the time that if you didn't know who the dummy was in the room, chances are the dummy was you. And if you looked around in the room and realized you're the smartest person, it's time to move rooms anyway. I don't think the sorting is just about who, like, what you value, as you were saying, Helene, but I think it's also about how you approach those changes as well. And we see that, and especially in the scene of the boys' dormitory, that each of the boys approaches the situation with the Daily Prophet and the ministry and Umbridge with these underlying qualities that don't come from Gryffindor. Neville approaches it with a very strong loyalty to Harry and Dumbledore, which is all Hufflepuff. Ron is obviously using his ambition as a prefect and his resourcefulness, which is very Slytherin. And Dean is ever logical and is saying, like, hey, it's not even safe for me to even talk about this with my parents right now. So, like, I just want to point out that privilege to you. And those are all and because they're all Gryffindors, yes, they're united from bravery and chivalry and that stalwartness, but their approach to this one conversation, to this radical change, shows these underlying qualities that come from, that are quote unquote other houses.
No, I think that's a really astute observation. I never thought about that before.
So it's not really about like not just where you're placed, but what else, how do your interactions with other people allow you to gain those values that your house might deem not unimportant, but secondary?
Neville being placed in Gryffindor always makes me think about not just like legacy in terms of family, like blood legacy, but also it makes me think of potential. So do we think the Sorting Hat sees the potential of each student? What is their greatest potential? It may not necessarily be a reality, because not all, hashtag not all Slytherins, but but it shows that perhaps what it could measure is the potential, and it's up to each of the students to measure up to that potential, and perhaps being placed within houses filled with people who have similar potentials can help them achieve that potential.
Mm-hmm.
So if the Sorting Hat perceived a Neville who grew up without parents and under a grandmother who questioned whether he was magical or not, nevertheless had the potential to stand up and be brave, right? And that's the biggest potential that the Sorting Hat saw in him. He understood that by placing him in Gryffindor, which is filled with people who either have the potential or are actively displaying bravery every second of the day. Shout out to Fred and George because they're funny and brave, and I love them. Also reckless, which I also love, but that's neither here nor there. That Neville can learn to live up to that potential that he has, that great potential.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking forward to the epic growth of Neville Longbottom.
Yeah, we get a ton of it in this book, so I'm excited. The DA really helps Neville come out of his shell and figure out who he is.
Neville Longbottom has the best glow up of the series.
Yeah, I would say he wins, most improved. For sure.
Speaking of improvements, maybe we should talk about Dementors and chocolate?
Yes.
Yeah.
So Helene, what's your Dementor in this chapter?
Kay Alex actually briefly touched upon this earlier, and I was like, man, that ties in directly to my Dementor in this chapter. But my Dementor is seeing Harry's various comforts at Hogwarts being stripped away from him one by one. Hogwarts is, his home. It's his happy place. It's a safe place. And this year it's kind of just like turning itself on its head. And there's no Hagrid. He gets less time with Ron and Hermione because they're prefects, and Umbridge is ruining his favorite class. It hasn't happened yet in this chapter, but it will. We all know. And Seamus, a really trusted friend of his, no longer trusts him or wants to be his friend because of the Daily Prophet. And so he's losing all of these things that he took comfort in, and it's just really sad to see.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. My Dementor is not just the character of one Dolores Umbridge as she makes her Hogwarts debut, because that is pretty bad, but also the description of Dolores by one Just Karen is just continues to be questionable in the way that she talks about her looking like a toad.
Yeah.
And being short. And I'm like, excuse me, I am 5 feet 2 inches. What do you have against short people?
I'm 5 foot. I'm not even any inches. I'm just 5 foot.
So also excuse you, short people matter too. And the description of Dolores Umbridge as a maiden aunt, as if that is something to be ashamed of. And I'm just like, excuse me, what do you have against aunts? Because this is the second time in the series where aunts are not shown favorably.
Well, what about Ron and his great aunt Tessie? I mean, she doesn't like aunts at all.
No, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. She doesn't like aunts at all.
Obviously, Aunt Petunia.
And
bad.
Also, Vernon's sister, bad.
Yeah, Marge is bad. Yeah.
So it's what do you have against aunts, my friend?
Yeah,
also,
you only see one good aunt, and that is Amelia Bones, who is Susan Bones' aunt.
Yeah, but even then, that's not something that's actually,
I mean, eventually Hermione becomes aunts.
Please stop. Anyway,
no.
She also has. I'm not done yet. I'm speaking. Anyway, just kidding. She also has something against very girly women.
Oh yeah, I was to wear pink for a long time after reading this book.
Kay Alex, what was your Dementor?
It took a while, but because I definitely agreed with you about Harry losing the innocence and the peace from Hogwarts, but I also thought it equally sad that Dean has to make the discerning decision of not informing his Muggle parents of what dangers are happening in the wizarding world. The pressure of a child having to make that decision is really heartbreaking.
Oh, yeah, that's kind of like when Hermione has to erase her parents' memories.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, but and I talk about this a lot, but for Dean to not only have to hide from his parents like what's going on at Hogwarts, like he's made that decision all on his lonesome. He didn't talk to anybody about it, and Dean is canonized as black. Like,
yeah,
this was not just the conversation of like personal decision making. This was, to me, a commentary on Black kids' relationships with their parents and the cultural awareness of being like, I'm not going to worry my parents about something that they can't do anything about. You know, like it's a very stark difference between Mrs. Weasley, Mrs. Finnegan, and Neville's grandma, like Mrs. Longbottom. Like all three of those women could potentially be involved in the wizarding world at some point. You know? Mm-hmm. And it's like Dean doesn't have that protection. He doesn't even have he doesn't have the privilege of being able to go to his parents and being like, hey, mom, like, you know, things are really changing at school and it's because of the Nazi regime. And, you know, the newspapers say that my roommate is crazy, but don't worry, everything is fine. You know, like, he can't even go to his parents for advice. And the fact that he has to tell both Harry and the rest of the guys, like, I'm not even stupid enough to bring this to my parents' attention. It shows a level of maturity and like a caste and racial divide that is ignored throughout the fandom several times.
No, it's super interesting to think about that deeply.
Because I would very much love a side story about what did Dean do this summer.
Oh yeah, that would be so. That was so good. Yeah,
like who was he able to go and talk to about Cedric dying? Who was he?
Yeah, how did he cope with that? You know,
yeah. Like who was he? You know, was he anticipating being made prefect? Was he thinking about like the OWL exams? Was he, you know, like you have this really mature, handsome, engaging guy, and he's the literal cultural outsider. He's the only Muggle-born in his dormitory. I believe he's almost the only Muggle-born boy in his class.
Possible. I guess we don't know about Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff, but
yeah. So it kind of like brings about the fact, like, yes, Hermione is supposed to be the Muggle-born main character, but Dean's proximity to Harry in this moment brings that cultural divide in a harsher light than Hermione's choices at this point do.
Mm-hmm. I'm a little surprised that Hermione and Dean aren't closer because they could have bonded over that.
Well, yeah, especially if Hermione had been canonized as black.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that would have been. It's a bit interesting that the two main, black characters are Muggle-born.
Yes, because this is all a caste system that is based on race. Raise your hand if you knew that.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's so it's so much more obvious to me now that we've had this discussion. That's crazy. I mean, I always knew it, but I never I feel like it's like, it's like I'm slapping you in the face. Hey, look. Crazy.
Yeah, like we don't and you kind of are left to assume that that almost everybody who was canonized as Black in the series has to be something other than pure blood.
Well, is Blaze canonized as black in the book, or is it just he was played by a Black actor? Because I doubt that they would have a Muggle-born sorted into Slytherin. That's the thing.
I think he was canonized as Italian in the books.
That makes sense.
The fandom community, at least the communities that I'm a part of, have done a really great job at filling in those gaps, or at least like giving the fandom an opportunity to imagine what those gaps would have been like had they been filled. And I think going further as we start to dive, not just more into the books, but also just into more young adult and fantasy series, we should continually ask ourselves, like, whose cultures and whose identities are being placed at the center of the conversation.
Yeah.
And why are authors getting away with huge gaps in their cultural bylines? Because she and JK is not the first author to do this, and she won't be the last, but she basically built an entire world based off of white supremacy and racial identities, and she didn't have to talk about Black people at all.
It's very interesting and concerning.
Yeah, it's a big red flag for me.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I guess when they say write what you know, she took it to a very literal level, in terms of, I know about all these systems that I benefit from. Here they are.
Make it pink.
Killing me softly. I like pink. Anyway, speaking of things that I like, chocolate is also a thing that I like. And what is your chocolate for this chapter, Helene?
Yeah, so my chocolate, surprising for me, it's actually Ron this time.
What?
This is one of the right. Thank God, I love it. One of the very, very rare instances, in my opinion, where we get to see Ron's loyalty towards Harry. I know that. I mean, I know that like he shows loyalty a lot throughout the books, but I feel like his disloyalty is much more apparent, especially to me. But him, along with Neville, and the way that they stand up for Harry against Seamus at the end of the chapter, like Harry really needs his people on his side right now. And Ron's loyalty here, while it's not always very present throughout the series, as we see in Goblet of Fire and Deathly Hallows, like it's his loyalty's on full display in this chapter, and I really, really appreciate it, and I loved it. I don't give Ron enough props, so here you go, Ron.
Me either. He can have this one cookie. He's earned it.
Yes.
And that's it for the Ron praise from Helene and K. Alex for the rest of the book.
Period.
Well, my chocolate is twofold. First off, hats off to one Neville Longbottom. The way that he stands by Harry, with his steadfast and quiet support, is everything. Because he's like very matter of fact, going like, I believe Harry, and this is what like Grandma and I think, and also we are victims of Voldemort, and we know that horrific things can happen, and in fact do happen. So why wouldn't we believe it? Fuck off, very kindly. And another thing that is as a side note of a chocolate for me is, that joke of like, the four types of students, like brave, evil, smart, and miscellaneous.
Mm-hmm.
That joke comes from the Sorting Hat song on this chapter, when he's like, well, and Hufflepuff took the rest. And so that's also delightful to me. Sorry, Helene. It's the Sorting Hat's fault.
Yeah, I was reading this chapter and was very upset as a Hufflepuff, I've got to say.
It's like, and then, Hufflepuff just went like, okay, I guess
I like the idea that it's kind of like we accept everyone. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're exceptional, but it's also not just saying like we only take the unexceptional people. It's saying anybody. We'll take people who
that don't get in anywhere.
Yeah, we'll take anybody because we're not going to judge you based on those things. We're going to judge you based on the people that you are and the actions that you take and the way you live your lives.
The way the narrative of the Sorting Hat, like the narrative the Sorting Hat put forth, all kidding aside, is a little bit of a Dementor, right? Because it's more about like, Hufflepuff took whoever the other three didn't want to teach, which says something about like, well, the rejects were like,
mm-hmm.
Not that any type of student is a reject. I don't believe that, but that was kind of the message of that section of the song, was like, well, I guess I'll take the lot of them.
Yeah. And this has been something that I've both wrestled with as a student and as a teacher, trying to understand that academic achievement or even just mental intellect is not the only way that children and people in general, but especially children, are valuable. And I struggle with this as a Ravenclaw, but I also struggle with this as someone who thought that like my intellect was the one thing that I had of value to give to other people or to like share with my communities. Like if I didn't have my brain, I'd be a loser. But like, I like the fact that going back to the chocolate of Neville's bravery here is indicative of Gryffindor, but not in the traditional sense of I'm putting myself face forward and I'm charging into the situation. It's a very quiet and resilient and forthright energy that's like, I said what I said and I mean what I say. And I like to deviate away from, I'd like to lean more into Helene's definition of Hufflepuff wanting to embrace children and people whose potential wasn't easily identified.
Yeah.
And I think we can all take a little bit more of that energy of not making the snap judgments, not assigning value off of one trait or one characteristic, and instead leaning into the whole picture or map of a person. But I will say this on the other side of it, because I always have a but. Hufflepuff got their movie and Ravenclaw didn't.
I mean, okay, we
got their main character.
Okay, so we got Newt Scamander, but like nothing about his Hufflepuffness is even like commented on at all in the movies. So yeah, he's a Hufflepuff and it's great, but like I wish that they dug into that, you know.
And Puffs is still like one of the greatest things about the fandom.
Oh, see, I haven't seen it yet. I need to see that for sure.
Yeah, you're a false Puff victim. I'm not. We can't even get the right colors in our merch. Okay?
Yeah. Ravenclaw is not treated well.
We can't even get the right bird.
It's true.
I honestly think Warner Brothers is just trolling you guys, because it's like, oh, the ones with the most attention to detail and the most intellectual ones, guess what, motherfuckers, we're gonna give you the wrong colors and the wrong bird.
Absolute aesthetic nightmare. It's upsetting me in my house, okay? It's upsetting me and my homegirls. Like, I understand. And how are the intellects always losing at everything? I just don't get it. I'm way too competitive to be leaving.
The Divergent series, the erudites actually end up being the bad guys in the Divergent series. So
I know, and that also makes me so upset.
Spoiler alert for the Divergent series if you haven't read that or seen those movies. But
yeah, other series where intellect is just treated as a freaking joke.
It's treated as dangerous in that one.
I'm getting off my.
Were one of those things your chocolate, or have you not touched on your chocolate yet?
My chocolate is, despite all the news and disturbing changes happening at Hogwarts, this chapter does give a slight homage to the Sorting Hat chapter in Sorcerer's Stone. And people ask me all the time, like, why Sorcerer's Stone is considered for me like one of my favorite Harry Potter books, if not my ultimate favorite, because I go back and forth between I'm a bookends kid, the
First and Seven.
Yeah, so because as someone who did go to boarding school, seeing your school and realizing that you're away from home and you're in this new environment and it's got this magic and it's got this air of mystery and adventure and your life is really starting to change is something that a lot of, I mean, people say that you get this when you go to college as well, but like, as someone who did start the path to boarding school when I was 11 years old, it became my home in a lot of the similar ways that Harry and Hogwarts bonded. And the Sorting Hat chapter in Sorcerer's Stone is the chapter where Harry really gets to see his school and his new home and and magic start to manifest in his life in a way that he never expected. And the fact that he's trying to hold on to that in this chapter with as tight of a grip as he can is a piece of chocolate to me. Because after a few years, you do become jaded a little bit. The magic does start to wear off. But the fact that he actually doesn't want to hold on to those things and he still treats Hogwarts as this place of value warms my heart. And speaking of great questions, last week we posed the following question: do we as a society judge others too quickly? Why or why not?
Well, we got a few really great responses. We got one on Instagram from Marshall Marquez. I think we're often not given the entire context of a situation and are left to judge by the little that we see and hear, which often leads to an error in judgment. And we got a tweet from sister podcast, Beyond the Veil. Says, yes, intentions matter, and you never know why people are the way they are until you get to know them. As Kingsley Shacklebolt said, every human life is worth the same and worth saving. These are great responses, you guys.
I know. I'm loving these. I am living for these guys. Honestly, thank you so much for your responses.
Yeah, they are awesome. I really like Marshall's response about not being given the entire context of a situation, which very much leans into the smear campaign that the Daily Prophet has put against Harry and Dumbledore at this point. Like, they're only being one side, and they're letting the audience kind of fill in the rest and make these judgments, and that are into absolute chaos.
Exactly. This week's question is, how have you grown as a person since you were 11, and would those changes have led to you being sorted into a different house today?
Ooh, that's such a burning question. Can I say I probably have not changed since I was 11, and that means that I have not developed as a human being at all.
I doubt that highly. I
am the least developed human being on the planet.
Girl, self-deprecation does not look good on you, okay? I'm sure that you have grown since you were 11 years old.
I'm sorry, it is my signature color along with ruby rose.
Oh my goodness. If you have intriguing any answers to this question that we have posed today, I'm going to be posting this question on our social media, and we really encourage you to respond. And if you don't feel comfortable, putting your response, if you think it's, you don't want to put it on social media, feel free to email it to us. If you don't want us to read it on the podcast, let us know. But I think that this is a really interesting question, and we really want to hear what you guys have to say. So please let us know.
Yeah, I think I would have still been in Ravenclaw, but I think that I have a much greater appreciation for the values of other houses than I did when I was a kid. Like,
yeah,
and just to tell you a really horrible and embarrassing story about me, as a kid, I was a bit of a bully to a young man who had trouble reading, and it turned out that he had a disability, and I knew nothing about having a disability, and I just had it in my head that he was stupid because he couldn't read. And I feel even more terrible telling you this story now, but the fact that he did come to school every day with the resilience and with a joy about learning and discovering his strengths, whether or not I saw them at all. Like, I appreciate that a lot more today than obviously I did when I was in 3rd or 4th grade being an asshole. And I like to think that if adulthood doesn't bring changes to our values, it should at least bring changes to how we value other people.
Yeah, and I mean that kind of ties back to the question last week and Marshall's response of not being given the entire context of the situation and therefore leading to an error in judgment. I mean,
yeah, I was extremely wrong.
But I mean, we're all people, we're all human, so no one can fault you for that. I mean, we all do this. It's not, it doesn't make you a bad person or anything like that.
I'm glad you think so, but I
mean, all kids are jerks at some point.
Oh yeah, for sure. But I like to think that growth is evident as we become older.
Yeah.
Because, some people just grow into being more of an asshole and then they become president. And
some people grow into the ground like a potato.
Yeah.
And that's Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a potato.
A rotten one for sure. Like, it's not even a good potato, like for fries.
I was about to say, he can't be a French fry potato. He's got to be
he's like rotten to the core.
I mean, we can actually. How about this? He's a carrot. Carrots grow into the ground, and he's orange. So there you go.
Period.
It's also a rotten carrot because we're not going to denigrate carrots. Like comparing.
Don't insult carrots.
Yeah.
Donald Trump is an insult to all carrots.
See, now I can't even insult the president because now people are going to be like, "Hey, Alex, has it changed?"
No, of course you can.
You just pick on bullies now. You're the bully that picks on bullies now.
You're like the Dexter of bullies. It's fine.
You're a vigilante bully,
Oh, period. I have a job. I'm like the sorting.
I was going to say the Dexter of bullying, but you took it away from me.
Yeah, I was going to say that's what I said.
I know, but that's what I'm saying. Like, you took it away from me. But I'm going to, before we move on to the media, I need to say this because I feel like it's going to be my catchphrase from now on. It's like my signature color, self-deprecation, and Ruby Woo.
That's your catchphrase now?
Yeah, or my signature style.
I'm so glad that I was able to pull that out of you.
I feel like you bring out the best in me. Thank you so much.
I know I do.
What am I, next door neighbors?
Well, the thing is, you have to understand, we're a little bit like David and Alexis. I'm definitely the Alexis.
Thank you. I want to be the David. So,
I mean, I do have a lot in common with David in terms of like fashion choices, but
Oh my goodness. Speaking of Schitt's Creek, as being a media that I have consumed in the past, what I am consuming currently, so like I've said, I've been mainly spending my time when I'm not working, which is all the freaking time. I've been reading the Percy Jackson series, and I'm currently halfway through book 3, so go me. But when I haven't been doing that, I have been getting nostalgic and watching Raven's Home on Disney Plus. So I was like a huge That's So Ravens fan back in the day. I used to watch Disney Channel when I was like middle school, high school. Yes, I watched Disney Channel as a high schooler. I was a big nerd. I don't care. I loved.
I'm sorry, who didn't? I'm sorry, who didn't?
I mean,
cool kids.
So That's So Raven was one of my all-time favorite shows, and while modern Disney like reboots and revivals of shows don't always, have the best track record, and at being anything near as good as their original Girl Meets World. Sorry. Raven's Home is actually very like palatable. Like it's actually like not that bad. And I wouldn't go as far as saying it's amazing or like as good as That's So Raven, because it's not. But it definitely does feel like a continuation of the original show. Raven feels like the same character that she was back in her own show, just like with kids. And you get Chelsea, and it's nice. Girl Meets World was kind of like an abomination. Boy Meets World is like one of my all-time favorite shows ever. Love that show. And Girl Meets World kind of ruined it. And it really didn't feel like the same type of show. It felt like they kind of made it completely different.
Do you feel the same way, like, when Jake, like, kind of like Just Karen and Twitter, like, ruined Karen for us, like, to that level?
I mean, it didn't have anything to do with transphobia. So, I mean, not on that same level.
But you know what I mean? Like, you would think like having a more transparent access to the thoughts of one of your favorite authors would make you like cherish the series more and not want to light it on fire.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say Girl Meets World changed my opinion on Boy Meets World, like J.K. Rowling's Twitter has changed my opinion on J.K. Rowling, but it definitely kind of just, it was an awful adaptation. It was awful. So Raven's Home is not like that. If you liked That's So Raven, I would suggest trying it if you want to have a little bit of nostalgia back in your life.
Awesome, because I do enjoy Disney and also enjoyed That's So Raven. So
yeah, and you can watch I think there's like 7 seasons or something of That's So Raven. It was the longest running Disney Channel show and the most successful and popular Disney Channel show. And it's all on Disney Plus. So I rewatched it earlier this year and I highly suggest it. So it's great.
Awesome. I am still continuing with my spooky season indulgences. I've recently, especially since Adri's letting me crash at her house for my birthday trip, recently watched the new Addams Family cartoon, in which the iconic characters are reprised by an all-star cast. Looking at you, Oscar Isaacs as Gomez. As they face the dangers of gentrification and assimilation in their new neighborhood. Also recommending The Babysitter's Guide to Monster Hunting, which stars Tamara Smart, aka Enid Nightingale, from another previously mentioned binge of mine, The Worst Witch.
I just had another friend recommend The Worst Witch to me earlier today, and I was like, "Oh yeah, that's the one that Kay Alex said to watch." So I guess I have to watch it now if more than one person is recommending it to me, right?
Yes, they're both on Netflix, which is great. Netflix is doing a really, really good job at the middle grade, young adult sci-fi fantasy. So, and I truly believe that the new Addams Family cartoon is going to be much better than whatever Tim Burton calls himself coming up with. So, and it'll be yet another thing I can't watch because Johnny Depp's in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially because, and not just me taking shots at Johnny Depp, because him and Amber Heard's, again, about looking at both sides and holding all parties accountable. But Tim Burton has also been very apparent in his, and very, I guess for lack of a better word, stubborn in his holdout of hiring people of color. He says he literally doesn't do it and that he will never do it.
Well, the thing is, like, well, that's awful, and I didn't know that, but like, also he just recycles actors for every single, like, he doesn't hire anyone new because all he does is hire people he's already hired before.
Yes.
I believe he also said that his aesthetic doesn't work with people of color.
That's just, oh my God, I want to puke right now all over the table. That's disgusting.
Yeah. I mean, how unimaginative and bigoted do you have to be to come up with that?
I can't imagine how boring this guy's life must be.
And just the fact that we've, have seen other actors, other directors and producers produce very similar content with people of color. In fact, a couple of days ago, I saw the trailer for Come Away, which is a movie about under the premise of Peter Pan and Alice being brother and sister. And both of them are being played by kids of color. In fact, they're being played by Black children. You hear that, Tim Burton? Black children. Which is like, again, that's not supposed to be radical change. That's just supposed to be change. Like, it's supposed to be like a no big deal, a no brainer kind of thing. Like, it's just like if Pablo Picasso went through his blue period his entire life. It's like, okay, bro, yeah, you're making quality paintings, but you think the color blue is the only color that exists. How awful.
It's a really good analogy.
Also, Pablo Picasso, very controversial, sexist pig. But, whatever. Anyhow, the media, first off, I want to start off the media I've been consuming with the following plea to Disney and Disney Plus. Make the Lizzie McGuire revival, you cowards. So upset at that.
The amendment make it the way that we should have made it, tailored towards the adult fans and not.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Like,
they fired
shut it down. They shut it down because it was going to be too quote adult. Whatever.
Yeah, we wanted to appeal to the younger audience. So it's like, well, no, those younger audience wasn't alive during Lizzie McGuire. What are you doing? I want make it for me.
Right.
You know what they can do? The younger audience, they can go watch the original. Anywho,
right?
That is my hot take about Disney.
It's not hot at all. It is very cold because
it's very cold.
We all agree.
It is as cold as ice cream. Anyhow, I've been watching the Adobe Max conference. It is a free conference that is put up by Adobe, showcasing not only their newest products, but and updates for those of us who have the Creative Cloud subscription. But it also showcases talent from around the world and has that talent kind of talk about their inspiration, where they, how they, not necessarily like a tutorial, but kind of more about like what their process looks like and what they're, what they've been doing. And one in particular, I forget his name, has been talking about how quarantine affected not just his business, but the way he also views his own productivity and how he needed to make space for his own enjoyment because he was just working as many of us do. And when we talk about creatives, people think like they live this bohemian lifestyle. But the fact is that because a lot of creatives like this person and other freelance creatives, they need to work to eat and they don't know where the next gig is coming from. So oftentimes what they will do is they'll just take on more and more gigs. And it's not an easy lifestyle to keep going. So finding balance is hard for all of us. And that was a kind of like a message that I want to take to heart.
Yeah. We all need to find balance and stick it to the man a little bit. I'll help you do that, Adri, because we've got ice cream cake in the freezer.
Oh, yeah, we do. Also, as I told you earlier, Alex, this evening, as my husband was unloading the dishwasher, this is the path that feminism, drew for me. This is how I do my part to fight the patriarchy. Is by letting my husband do all the chores.
Dear God, I see what you do for others.
You're such a activist. You're a leader in this generation, Adri.
I feel like I should be in pins by now.
Yeah, I feel like Adri at least you need your own stamp at this point.
Well, like the Rosie the Riveter posters, like just like the Latino version of that. But like sitting on the couch while someone does the chores around the house.
I love it.
Period.
It's me sitting on the couch with like a Coke Zero in one hand and 3 dogs on my lap.
Love
See,
it.
I don't have anyone else to do my chores for me. If I did, I would take advantage of that for sure.
You know, all it takes is like prayer, a little bit of magic, and some, I guess, I don't know,
sexual
mystique.
Appeal?
I don't know. I don't think it even has to do with that. It's more like, you know, you just wear them down enough.
You got chutzpah, kid. I appreciate it. We know that you love our antics, but that's it for today's episode. Join us.
No.
I know, right? Parting is such sweet, sweet sorrow. Join us next time on Dragon Ball. Nope, wrong fandom. Join us next week to talk about Chapter 12 of Order of the Phoenix.
Which is...
And that one is Dolores Umbridge.
No, it's just called Professor Umbridge, but close.
Sorry. Professor Umbridge. I am so sorry. I'm sorry, my children. But guess what? You can find us everywhere online by looking at the handle at Aciopolitics and at aciopolitics.com. You can support our podcast by becoming a patron, and by doing so, you can get physical goodies every 3 months for as little as $5 a month at patreon.com/aciopolitics. Also, patrons at $2 a month get extended bonus content.
Heck yeah. You can also leave us a voicemail at 915-996-1699 with all of your burning thoughts and questions. And if you're feeling shy, you can definitely email us at info@aciopolitics.com. Also, leave us a 5-star review on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts. It really helps, and I love reading them. And please, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
Yes.
And if you don't like our
is my love
podcast,
language.
I have follow-up questions. 1, why are you listening? 2, what are you doing with your life? 3, there are better ways to, you know, pass your time. Go and do what you enjoy doing. And recommendation 4, just don't give us a 1-star review. Just don't do it.
We would prefer you didn't do that. Yeah, that would be
just keep it to yourself. Thank you.
Yeah, it's my birthday. Leave us a 5-star review.
Yeah, just leave us a 5-star review, and all it has to say is "Happy Birthday, K. Alex," and as long as it's 5 stars, like, you're golden.
Period. And until then, politics managed. Keep safe and keep faith. Have a good night. You love that horn so much.
Honestly,
take it away from me.
The air horn should just be our theme music. Just the air horn for like 30 seconds straight.
Hey, Helene, did you like the way I ended the podcast last week?
I did. It was really funny.
I gave you the last word.
It was great. I thoroughly enjoyed it.